Ibuprofen Central 12.
Wrong spot, Dr. Santos. And you need a sticker.
Put it in the nursing orders rack and meet me over at PDS.
How much does this suck?
You didn't think today could get any worse.
This is how we rolled when I was a resident.
Was that in the 1900s?
Yeah, when charts were written by candlelight.
Welcome to the Pitt podcast, the official companion to the Pitt from HBO Max. I'm Dr. Alok Patel.
And I'm Hunter Harris. This week, it was 2 o'clock on the Pitt, which means it's episode 8. And today, we're going to get to hear from Irene Choi, who plays Joy Kwon, and Lucas Iverson, who plays James Ogilvie.
I showed up for the fitting and people were like, "Hey, you're a gunner." And I was like, "A what?" And they're like as I'm like trying 60 t-shirts on, they're like, "Yeah, I hear you have so much beef with Javadi." And I was like, "Wait, who the fuck is this guy?"
And then we'll go outside the Pitt to talk about that hospital, fashion, and drip with Lyn Paolo, the show's costume designer.
Go through the whole thing with deep descriptions from the doctors of how much blood that would be, research on blood splatter. I feel like I'm working on Dexter, you know?
Today's shift starts now. Hunter, this episode starts out with yet another reminder that our Pitt crew cannot catch a break because now they're working in the already crazy ER and the computers are down. Any healthcare professional, basically anyone who's worked in a hospital in some capacity, knows that this situation is a workflow and logistical nightmare because we rely on the computer to basically do almost everything when it comes to patient care, labs, imaging, orders, communicating with one another, all of it.
Honestly, sounds like my nightmare. And I just use my phone to see memes.
Memes matter too. That's the thing. So even in between patients, they can't look at memes. Let's relive this catastrophic workflow moment.
Okay, let's say, for example, Dr. Alashimi has a new patient with belly pain.
For the history, circle the positives like vomiting and diarrhea, backslash the negatives such as recent travel, sick contacts, fever. For physical exam, check mark normals on the left and circle any abnormal findings on the right. Questions?
Is your generative AI program still going to be working?
Not for a while. And ditch your Spectralink phones. There's your voice over internet.
Santos had to slip that in.
Well,
she had to slip that in.
No, the charting is going to be double duty now. No, she's doing it all by hand. Is that how that would work?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts here. So this scene really elaborates just how much hospitals and physicians, nurses, all of us rely on the computer system. And if there is scheduled downtime, we call it, there usually is a plan in place and people have some type of organized structure. We see Dr. Robbie kind of saying charts go here for bug bites. They go here for anything that's above the belt that needs to be in the ER. But there's all these other little things that people don't think about. Dr. Al-Hashmi mentioned the phones are going to be down because there are in-hospital phones you can no longer use. There's a part towards the end of the episode when you notice that people aren't using ballpoint pens to write on the forms to make sure they go through all the bottom layers. I will tell you, literally last night in the hospital, we had a transferred patient and I signed this form with a felt tip pen, just like somebody did in this episode. And the nurse was like, "Hey, idiot, you've done this before. It doesn't go to the bottom layer." And so it's things like that. It's things like making lab orders aren't going to X or an accident. There's so many little things. It's like a set of dominoes.
Yeah, so I would call that my nightmare, I think. Is this how stuff happened? I don't know. What does Joy say? In the olden times, in the 1900s? This really felt like it was very triggering to me as someone who I don't know what I would do even for an hour without having access to the internet. Just sit with my own thoughts? Absolutely not.
I will say it's a little moment for us to check our privilege a little bit. So yes, back in the day here, there was a lot of medical care that was done without computers. But when people go and work in resource poor areas, when they work overseas, they're doing this by hand. They don't have the same medical charts we do. They don't have electronic medical records, computers. Things are pretty old school. I know someone who worked in a clinic in an underserved area, and they were still using old school X-ray film. From the shows where they're holding the film up to a light. I haven't done that in my entire medical career in the United States, once overseas.
Wow, that's incredible. I guess I do. I have a new appreciation, I suppose, for how things used to be done. But as a resident young person, I'm like, how are they going to get through this day? Everyone's already like stressed enough. And now like having to relearn, new, I guess, workflow is going to just, I think, ratchet up the tension in a really interesting way.
Oh, it just sets the episode up for some more drama. And we get Santos just getting that little one-liner, be like, where's your LLM now? So moving on, another interesting medical moment. We have this patient coming in who's heavier set. They need to establish an airway. Immediately based on what we've seen in the show, people are thinking intubation because all Pitt viewers are basically, screen experts at intubating, but they do a nasotracheal intubation. Hunter, have you ever seen this? Have you heard of this before? Did this surprise you?
Okay, so again, why would I see this? I was interested to see how everyone, kind of responded with different levels of sensitivity. Most of the staff with a lot of sensitivity, Ogilvie with absolutely none. I was
Shocker.
Like, the moment of him saying, why don't we try the zoo if we need to get a CT? I was like, oh, first of all, that's so rude. Second of all, he can hear you.
So believe it or not, and I have not personally been involved in one of these situations, I have heard stories about people calling zoos, asking to use their CT scans because of the weight or size limits in hospitals. Now, again, I'm not sure how this has evolved over time. We've heard these stories. Anyone can go and look up on the internet and you'll see case reports about it. There are even case reports of zoos refusing patients, which is interesting. I've even heard stories about animals from the zoo going to hospitals to use their CT scans. I have a friend who's a radiologist and they once got a mongoose that they had to take an image of. So, hey, listen, we're all animals at the end of the day. We got to help each other. But you're right. Ogilvie is not dishing any empathy right now. He's asking about, Wegovy, Ozempic, water aerobics. People are like, hey, can we please take care of this man? But I think, what we're starting to see in this episode, in this season, is stories of empathy and relatability. Because this gentleman, he's got his weight issues, but he acknowledges it. He talks about, how he lost his job and he got injured. And he's got a little bit of a sense of humor, too, which makes him likable.
I really relate to, him feeling the awkwardness, but still needing attention, I guess. And I cannot imagine how it feels to be coming in, basically afraid for your life and then not even being treated with dignity as a human by, someone who's supposed to be taking care of you on your medical team, who's basically asking you how did you even get like this? What's wrong with you? It just really made me sad to watch.
There is a lot of underlying empathy and stories of human connection in this episode. But let's go back to the fun procedure that captivates Hunter Harris, the nasotracheal intubation. Let's see it in action.
Okay, Howard, hold still. I am now going in past your vocal cords until we see the carina. Ogilvie?
There. Right and left mainstem.
And the tube slides in. And the scope comes out. Great.
Okay, so I become viscerally uncomfortable watching a cord being pulled out of a nose, but that was very cool to watch.
It's kind of beautiful, right? It's kind of beautiful.
I do like the word carina. What is that?
Carina, yeah.
Carina.
We have to give a shout out to the prop master with that image in the video and the model that was used, because I'm pretty sure they didn't actually nasotracheally intubate a patient. That would probably be violating some standards. But there's landmarks that they're looking for. The first one is a vocal cord, one that looks like the little window, and they see that, so they know they're heading down the windpipe and not accidentally into the esophagus and the stomach. Past that, and then the carina is right where your lungs split off, and that's where Ogilvie's like, hey, there's the carina, and that's a good spot to leave the tube. I can't wait to hear from my colleagues who work in anesthesia who have done this procedure and understand it, to kind of get a comparison about how smooth it is in this episode versus real life. But honestly, if you got to get an airway in a patient, plan A oftentimes is through the mouth. But guess what? Sometimes there's issues with the jaw, there's facial trauma, there's mechanical problems. If somebody's heavier set, it might be harder to get that airway. So plan B, through the nose. Nasotracheal, it means nose, then windpipe, then you're getting them that secure airway. And our pit crew does it masterfully.
Sorry.
Oh my God.
I remember.
Great. If everybody else can remember their patient names and their room numbers, that would be
No,
awesome.
I mean, I can remember all of it.
All of what?
Names, doctors, room numbers. I kind of have a photographic memory.
Another victory, and like a secret victory for Joy. She's kind of a badass.
Kind of. I'm obsessed with Joy. Joy is like the goat of the season for me.
I know, like, first of all, she's got this savant photographic memory that comes out of nowhere, has the entire board memorized.
I love how humble she is about it too. She's like, oh, I remember my patients and also everyone else's. Because, I kind of have a photographic memory. Sorry. And also poor Whitaker, who tried to snap a photo of the board and it was just completely out of focus. I'm like, I know he's not an Instagram boyfriend. That's why he's a farm boyfriend.
She comes in and drops the diagnosis on this patient with a rash that Javadi and Ogilvie are having their gunner battle about.
A rash is an understatement. I'll say that.
Dr. Robbie, we picked up a patient together.
Teamwork.
It's a concerning bullous rash.
We might need a biopsy for pemphigus
It's
vulgare.
Phytophotodermatitis. What? I asked. He was making 3 gallons of margaritas for a party, squeezing fresh limes out in the sun.
Let's go take a peek.
I don't need to see it again.
That was kind of a mic drop moment from Joy, no? I love the way she says, I don't need to see it again. Like, I've handled it. Don't worry.
So Joy was right, according to Dr. Robbie, but she's describing phytophotodermatitis. This is a condition in which you get these chemicals from certain plants, these photosensitive chemicals. Limes and lemons have them. They get on your skin. Then there's a chemical reaction from UVA radiation from the sun, and you get this rash.
I do like that at the very end of that scene, Dr. Robbie reminds this patient to wear sunscreen because I don't know if you know, no one wears sunscreen enough. And that is like maybe one of my favorite causes to remind people.
Are you wearing sunscreen right now? H squared?
Absolutely, I am.
So the nurse examiner is supposed to lock up the rape kit in this fridge where it stays until it gets turned over to law enforcement. It's called preserving the chain of evidence. Are you fucking kidding me?
Is there a problem?
Jesus Christ. Police are supposed to pick up the rape kits within 72 hours. This one I did 2 weeks ago.
So the computers aren't working. The system has been shut down. Everything's going back to paper. And Nurse Dana is still in a private room collecting the exam for the woman who was sexually assaulted, meaning Princess has to step in and step up as charge nurse because Nurse Dana can't leave the room legally as she's collecting all of this evidence.
Oh, Charge Nurse Dana's mad, rightfully so.
That was like the most maybe despicable part of this entire episode. Her opening the refrigerator and like that the police wouldn't even care enough to come pick up after we've just seen how exhausting emotionally and physically that type of examination was so sad.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, especially when, I mean, she, as she said, I think to Nurse Emma in the very beginning that like sometimes you might have to be called upon to testify or to, appear in court because you're literally collecting evidence.
Speaking of appearing in court, we got to talk about that too.
Incredible transition. I'm going to give you your 10s for that one. Finally, it is time, well, almost, for Mel to go upstairs and be deposed. And I'm so happy that Dr. Ellis, the night resident, who had just come down from her deposition, says, we can't talk about the case, but I'm just giving you a monologue that you are allowed to overhear. And we learn that the patient that's involved in this malpractice suit is the spinal tap from season 1.
The malpractice case is frivolous. The mother of the measles kid claims we caused intellectual decline by performing a spinal tap. But the tap was perfect with no complications. Her son presented with altered mental status due to low oxygen from measles pneumonia. Any change in intellect was due to hypoxic brain injury. It had nothing to do with your spinal tap. End of monologue. We never discussed the case. I gotta get some sleep.
The amount of times that parents or families have threatened to sue us because we're like, your child needs this treatment, it's life or death, and they're like, fine, but if anything goes wrong, I'm going to sue you. I can't wait to hear from the lawyers about this scene. Like, I'm just curious to hear what they're going to say, like, how illegal is that? And what Dr. Ellis did was this, and that would never happen. I just can't wait to hear their commentary.
Well, I ride for Dr. King. She needed it.
I'm with you.
It's fine to me.
I'm not on the side of malpractice lawyers unless it's I'm on Team King, Team Ellis, Team not you people.
Right.
Unless there's an actual issue that warrants an investigation, because they do happen, but we know that in this situation it wasn't.
Dr. Langdon this episode is giving lonely boy, gossip girl, Dan Humphrey. Like, everyone is either avoiding him or ignoring him.
So specific.
Well, it's the truth. I do kind of feel, not to sound like a boy mom, but I do kind of feel bad for him this episode. Santos is kind of, if not actively ignoring him, really trying to like stay out of his way. Obviously, Robbie's not speaking to him. And a real nice moment of connection is that Dr. McKay says, you know, the first year of sobriety is the hardest. And I know because I'm 9 years sober. And that was, I think, a very sweet, small moment between the two of them. I thought was really nice, especially Dr. McKay is having a hard day on her own, but that she's kind of taking a moment to extend an olive branch, I thought was very sweet.
How's your first shift back going?
One day at a time.
First year sober is the hardest.
That's what they keep telling me.
I'm 9 years and counting. Oh, special delivery for my guy. If you need anything, call me.
Thanks.
It was great visual acting too, because the minute she said that, Langdon had this look of relatability, connection, relief, recognition. And finally, like, oh my gosh, somebody here gets it.
This was a really good episode for the medical students this week. We got a lot of stuff from Choi, from Ogilvie, from Javadi. So I was impressed. And actually this week on Inside the Pit, we have Irene Choi, who plays Joy Kwon, and Lucas Iverson, who plays James Ogilvie. Let's check it out.
Differential for syncope in an adolescent.
Cardiac arrhythmia from drugs, long QT, WPW,
sepsis.
or Brugada.
Brugada is more common in Asian males.
But still should be considered.
Long odds, though. Brugada prevalence is 1 in 20,000 in North America, as high as 1 in 300 in Asia and the Middle East.
Irene, Lucas, thank you so much for being with us today, because I'm sorry, like, Joy is one of my favorite characters.
Thank you.
And Ogilvie I love to hate a little bit, I guess. But I want to start, how did you guys come onto the show? What were your auditions like? And what was like the whole process?
I remember like submitting my tape and thinking I didn't do well. Like, it was a really chaotic week. Like, literally, I was actually getting married that week. Like, the audition was like due like the day before my in-laws were coming into town. And I remember messaging my reps back and just saying, like, I had no time to prepare for this. I did such an awful job. Can I just retape for this? And then they were like, oh, actually, they want to bring you back for it. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And it was like, it was honestly, I know people say this a lot, but it was a really, really organic process. Like, I cried when I first got this role, not because it was like such an emotional scene or really anything, but for me personally, being an Asian woman in this industry, I had never, it'd been so rare. It's really rare for me to get a part that's so genuine and authentic.
A slow clap to that.
Lucas, what was your audition like?
I had already seen the show. I overlapped with Patrick in grad school. So in support of him, I like watched the first episode. I was like, damn, this is pretty good. Let me keep watching. And by the time this rolled around, this was my 5th audition and I had finished the season and I was so in love with the show. Similarly, I was like, well, there's absolutely no way. I remember that it was also a crazy week. I had like 4 other auditions that week on top of, my New York day job schedule. So I woke up, I went and I coached debate, and then I like went to a restaurant. No, I taped the audition, and then I had to go and coach debate and then work at a restaurant. And as I was getting on the subway, I like stopped and called my manager and I was like, I think that's wrong. I think I did the wrong thing. Can you hold the tape and can we get an extension? And then he was like, okay, yes, let me ask. We got the extension approved for 1 day. I was like, great. I worked that first job. I worked that second job. I come home at midnight. My best friend, I'm lucky enough, lives the floor below me in this building in New York. And so I like knock on her door and I'm like, can you help me retape this? We go up, we start taping at midnight. We finish at 1 a.m. I send it off at 1:30, pass out, wake up and repeat the next day. And that retaping was sort of the thing. I don't know what it was, but I just like understood the scene in a very different way than what I had originally done. And it just clicked all the way through.
Oh, that's
I love the hustle from both of you. So Lucas, you were in grad school. What were you studying or specializing in grad school?
Acting. This.
A little birdie told me that you have theater experience, and I think this is fascinating because we've also, Hunter and I have heard from some of the show creators about how they want to inject some theater into the characters. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on what Lucas brings to Ogilvie in terms of theater and that background.
For sure. Yes, I love theater. Theater is my first love. I'm just working on prepping another play right now. And this actually, I did like 4 lines on The Gilded Age a year, like just after I left, a little co-star.
Larry, there you are. Here, right this way. 2 more for my friends, please. Have a seat. This is my partner, Jack Trotter. We heard about the clock. Well, I do hope you'll have a good evening, Trotter.
And I had no other real camera experience than this. So like the theater muscle is sort of the only thing I had to bring. But it really is similar. I see why they want people who do a lot of theater. When we started shooting, I immediately was aware of the pace of how we work, how we'll finish one take and immediately launch into another. And it's so funny. The camera operators are crawling all around. They're like, oh, it's so hands-on. I remember we were doing our first scene with the dummy, and Amy on B cam is like hiding somewhere behind me. I'm not really sure. And then we're like doing the scene. And then I look over and she's right here next to my face. And I was like, oh, fuck, you know? But like the muscle is stay in it no matter what. You don't know if it's on you. So every take, be all the way in. No freebies, no light work, commit. And I think that's something tangible that theater would translate to here.
Wow. What is it like to join such a big ensemble, especially a show in its 2nd season?
I was imposter syndroming through the whole thing. I had never been on a show with so many people classically professionally trained. It's like you watch this show, it's so good. You watch season 1, it's so good. And for me, it's like if someone gave me this like painting and it was like an amazing painting and they gave me a paintbrush, you know, and then they were like, here, you add something. Or if someone gave me this amazing like dish at a restaurant and the chef was like, you add something. And I'm like, ooh, I don't want to fuck this up. So I didn't want to be the person that was going to, you know, like F up the formula. And so to me, like, that's kind of how I felt. It was just an amazing experience to be on a set where you see that sort of, you see a lot of people just fostering each other, you know, despite your experiences or where you're coming from.
Similarly, I also had unreal imposter syndrome, but for the exact opposite reason. I was like looking at Irene and I was like, oh, that is someone who knows how to work a camera, you know? And I did not know that. And I felt like I was learning how to do the job on the job in a lot of ways. And how do you scale things down and all of these questions. And so my anxieties were all like, oh, you're deeply learning how to do this. And you're going to be learning how to do this. And so many millions of people now. My therapist was like, think about it this way. It's you and 10 million of your best friends learning how to do this together. And I was like, yeah, for sure. That's right. But everybody was so lovely and so welcoming. And it made it really fun to learn. And it made it fun to just show up every day and try again and again and again. And everybody was so giving such grace. It's like, it was an actor's paradise, you know, simultaneously a gym and a stage and a moment of reflection all in one. It was lovely.
Irene, at the premiere, I was honored to meet you. And I was talking about how much I appreciated that Choi kind of has this humility, but then she like rolls in like a homing missile with these pearls of wisdom and these huge moments. And one of them is like, as a physician, I can empathize with the chaos of the code black and the computers being down. And then Choi just rolls in with this like savant photographic memory and gets the chart down. There's also this really powerful moment where Choi talks about healthcare pricing and her own experience. And so there's these little elements where you get a little bit more of the layers of the onion peeled back, if you will. So I wanted to ask you, how does Choi actually feel about the emergency department? And how do you play that duality of kind of chill, mellow resident, but also I am kind of a boss?
You're right. There is like an evolution of kind of my attitude change. I come in kind of hostile. And I, contextually speaking, I mean, I love Lucas as a person, but Joy does not like Ogilvie. And I had to think about that in terms of myself. And I, myself personally, I do not thrive in competitive environments. And Ogilvie coming on so strong, I think she sort of just checks out, and it's not really the environment for her to shine when she's paired with this louder character, essentially.
You could say it. You could say it.
Say it.
And it's just like she gets these sort of like, I think she's sort of triggered by these sort of like white mansplaining vibes that she's probably dealt with her entire life. This is just sort of one of those things. It's like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And Scott Gemmell, he gave me this breakdown of the story that Joy is the daughter of immigrants, Korean immigrants, and that she goes into this field because she had her family members didn't have healthcare, and that actually is when it really hit for me, because I grew up in a family where my parents strongly pushed me toward medicine, and there's this struggle of, she knows that she's smart, she doesn't know if she belongs here, but at the same time, I don't know if she wants to be there. But maybe she doesn't want to be there because she doesn't feel like she belongs there. It's like the sort of chicken or the egg thing, so I think she comes off as really defensive, as like, it's kind of, she's sort of self-sabotaging, right? It means that if she doesn't get to move forward, she can say, I never wanted this in the first place. But at the same time, Joy is someone that is, I think, very used to being misunderstood, with a secret wish for being more understood, yet at the same time does not let anyone in.
You just explained so much complexity of Joy.
I'm happy for her to be, I'm fine with her being misunderstood, because I think that's kind of, in some ways, that's her like defense mechanism.
I appreciate your transparency with that. Lucas, I want to ask you about Ogilvie, and specifically, two-part question. Number one, did you get any type of briefing on what a gunner medical student was and what they were supposed to embody? Because Ogilvie like nails it. I know like 7 Ogilvies. I was like, oh my gosh, Lucas nailed this character.
What do you got?
Yeah, 10-foot fall, altered.
That's a long way down.
10 feet is the threshold for trauma center activation. 10 feet, 10% mortality.
0%. Anything over 0% is a concern.
So I wanted to ask you that two-part question. Did you do some preparation on how to be a gunner? And how do you think Ogilvie feels in these moments when he's like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I'm not perfect?
I sort of didn't know much about Ogilvie other than like the sides that's sort of all we got at first, is we had our sides that we auditioned with. And then I showed up for the fitting and people were like, hey, you're a gunner. And I was like, a what? And they're like as I'm like trying 60 t-shirts on, they're like, yeah, I hear you have so much beef with Javati. And I was like, wait, who the fuck is this guy? When we were shooting episode 1, we're filming the scene where Ethan Bostick dies. And we're looking at his dead body. And Irene, you said something like, we should all be so lucky or whatever. And we have this little moment where we're staring at him. And John comes in and he's like, yeah, Lucas, you're looking too sympathetic. You really don't give a you don't give a shit. and I was like, really? Okay, I'll look meaner. And then on a little break that we had when we were setting up another shot, I mustered my courage because I was so afraid to talk to him. And I went up to John and I was like, hey, am I being too much of an asshole? And John was like, you are not being nearly enough of an asshole. Your job is to be the biggest fucking asshole. And he gave me this whole breakdown about what a gunner really is and what this gunner really is. And then Dr. Lizzie was also there, who's one of our incredible doctors that we have on set, real life emergency room physician, amazing human being. And she contributed with these stories about what gunners are and what they've been. And we probably spent 8 or 9 minutes and I was just like soaking it up like a sponge. And we ended up going back and shooting a scene again so that I could be even worse. That sort of began my hate relationship with Ogilvie. I really hated that guy for a really long time. He is somebody who I think is representative of an ideology that is kind of prominent in today's world, which is, I believe you could summarize him by saying he believes that people are largely directly responsible for the state of their lives. And he's so certain of it, even though it's really flimsy. And over the course of the shift, it chips away. And he slowly learns that that worldview is not exactly compatible with reality. And I think that has a cost for him, not only in terms of his ego, but also I think what he values in medicine. So like a big moment for him that just happened is when he's watching Robbie give the eulogy for Louis. And he's sort of thinking about, oh, is this what it is to be a doctor? Look at all of this care and this tenderness, how a doctor is in many ways a guide and not just a book, that filled with answers, which I think is a much more comfortable way for him to view medicine. And the stuff with Howard, Craig, by the way, who played Howard, amazing actor, love him, showed up at a 10 and carried it all the way through.
An ultrasound check for an appy.
He's a little too large for ultrasound. Our CT can only handle 450 pounds.
And so if he's over that, we send him to the zoo?
He's right there.
I think he is faulting Howard for what's happened to him. And when Howard tells him what's going on with his life, it's sort of this moment of, oh shit, I think I messed up. And the shift becomes a series of oh shits for Ogilvie. And we'll have to see where it goes. But yeah, it's something cracks, each time it happens.
That was a philosophical take on that. But I got to ask one quick question. Irene, what was it like working with that patient and the tongue and retracting it?
I have to say, like, I do feel, no, I'm not going to jinx myself. The really psychopathic part of me is like, I really feel like if someone got a huge cut around me, I would be able to sew them up really well.
You could suture it?
I really, really feel that way.
God.
I kind of want it to happen so I can prove myself, but I also don't want it to happen because in case I failed, and it's really embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I actually
then that's a lawsuit.
really do feel that way. I'm like, I'd be really good at this. That's not funny. That's me thinking that because I play a doctor that I can all of a sudden be one. And that is not true. 100% not true.
Listen, we're here for it. This is called method acting now turns into real life. I'm here for it. I have one last question. This is out of sheer curiosity. Huge show you both landed on. What has the reception been like from your friends and family? What has that been like?
I come from a family that is not familiar with the industry at all. And when I got the show, there was some article that was floating around out there where George Clooney had said, I think the Pitt is a great show. And I think my dad texted me and he says, George Clooney knows about the pits. And so to them, the fact that I'm on a show that George Clooney's heard of was like a big deal. Like that's all. That's
the metric.
Like, it means it's a real show.
The reception's been insane. It's been really humbling and gratifying and surreal. And my parents are really big on Facebook and they love talking to the Pitt fan page people on Facebook. My dad in particular, he's just like messaging them sometimes.
Wait, that is the purest thing I've ever heard.
That's amazing.
It's really
sweet. Does he say that his son is on it?
Yeah, he comments like, that's my son. And it gets like 45 likes. And he's like, look what happened today.
I am so going and joining this community on Facebook.
You'll see him. You'll interact with my father there. But it's been great. Everybody and their mother, it feels like, has reached out and voiced that they're really proud. Most moving to me, I was sick a lot as a kid. I had a condition. I was a frequent flyer in and out of the hospital. So the doctors who took care of me, and I've been their lifelong patient, for them to reach out and be like, hey, I see you and I'm proud of you. That means the world. And it's also so much pressure. And I just really hope I'm doing him justice with this awful man. Not awful. He has a lot to learn.
Irene and Lucas, thank you guys so much. This was like the best time.
You both are crushing it, as you can tell by ratings and by all the comments and all the praise. And I cannot echo my sentiments enough as a physician and a fan for everything you add to it. So thank you both. Thank you both for your wonderful portrayals, but for also just being kick-ass humans and actors.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
There's one person who has like kind of shaken up the pit more than anyone else for me this season, and it's Choi. The first couple episodes, I was like, I don't really know what's going on. I'm not really like, she's just kind of there. And Ogilvie is like taking up so much oxygen in the room, but I'm like a Choi defender now.
And Lucas is nothing like Ogilvie. I know they're actors. But it's still like, when we talked to him at the premiere, and he is nothing like Ogilvie, just kind of speaks to the skills they both have. And it's funny how they both thought that they didn't do well in their auditions. Well, clearly they both did.
Yeah. But also, I cannot imagine, honestly, joining this show as a new actor with a cast this big, with so much acclaim, obviously, but also like working with people who've been working together for a year already. I say kudos to them.
A recurring theme that I keep getting fascinated by is how much theater influenced the show, how it's filmed, the blocking, the movement, and in some of the casting. We've heard this now multiple times from people who talk about, wanting actors with that theater experience. And I'm glad that Choi and Lucas kind of brought that up. And in fact, that Lucas stays in character as Ogilvie, regardless of what happens. Because, if you go see a play, something happens, like the show must continue. And speaking of theater, another big component when you go see a play is the costumes. At first glance, somebody might say, hey, on the Pit, they're just dressed like normal individuals and they're just wearing scrubs. But there's so much more to it. So I'm glad that we get to talk to the costume designer, Lyn Paolo, about everything that goes into the fit and the look of everyone on the Pit.
The fit of the Pit. The fits of the Pit. I like it.
The fits of the Pit.
So, Lyn, you wrote on Instagram something that I have so many questions about. You said every costume in the Pit is created in detail to create the character's unspoken story before the actor even utters their first word. So those details matter, even though most people are all in hospital scrubs. But can you give us an example of how you thought about the details for any one of these really unique characters?
I feel like, having done a hospital show before, it was important to me that that was a true statement and that we delve deep into each character. And before I even met any of the actors, Scott Gemmell and John Wells and Noah and I had long conversations about who each person was before I met the actors. And so, for instance, for Dr. Robbie, he never wears a full set of scrubs. He's always in some version of his kind of uniform, which is maybe a pair of Carhartt pants, a long sleeve t-shirt, maybe a Patagonia jacket. He's just never head to toe in scrubs. And neither is Sean Haddis's character. So, because they're the old guard of the hospital, of the emergency department. So they don't have to stick to the rules as much as maybe our young students who are just starting out, who were head to toe in scrubs. However, with each of them, every single one of them is in a different version of the scrub. There'll be a difference in the neck, there'll be a different pant, there'll be a subtle difference in what they're wearing underneath. And every single person on the show has their own shoe brand, which we change up every year. But these actors wear the same shoes for 7 months. And we buy 10 to 12 pairs of those shoes for each person. So we make sure that their feet are, not suffering too much in their shoes over the time.
Wow. How do you decide who gets what shoe brand?
It's first come, first served. And we pull to character thinking, okay, I think this person is a Nike person. And we'll have, when an actor comes in, we'll have 20 or 30 pairs of shoes in the room. And then once that brand is gone, it's gone. We really do try to make sure that each person is distinctly different from anyone else. And I will say that on the Reddit feeds and the fan databases, people notice those tiny little itsy bitsy things. They notice that the earrings this year, some of our characters have 4th of July earrings, some don't. Our 4th of July pins, all the tiny little touches that we give to tell the story of where we are in the year. they love. And I get tons of comments on Instagram and little DMs on Instagram from people. It's sort of fun.
Yes, I love Javati's 4th of July little earring stack. It was so cute.
Yeah, it was adorable. I mean, they're all, now that our actors are learning who their characters are after 2 seasons, they have a lot of input, which I appreciate. You know, we talk it back and forth. For instance, this show with Catherine, she had called me and I'd said, you know, it's the 4th of July. We're going to have a bunch of 4th of July paraphernalia in everyone's fittings, and you know, we're going to figure out what everyone's going to have. And she said, I'd love something vintage. And I said, well, great. You know, we have tons of vintage options. And we found that little Liberty Bell pin for her for this season. And of course, there was only one of it. So we ended up having to send it out to an artist friend of mine, and they made 5 more of the vintage pin. We figured it could have been her grandmother's pin or her granddad's pin. You know, It was a family heirloom that had been passed down.
The details, they definitely matter. They add complexity. And speaking of details, like show is set in Pittsburgh. And, you know, the beginning of the season, we see Patrick Ball, we see Langdon wearing a Pittsburgh Penguins hat. But in season 1, Noah Wiley's wearing that Beers of the Berg sweatshirt, which it's just such a cool nod. I'm just curious how you pick which local businesses or which local event to highlight in the costume.
Well, we do a lot of research every season, and last year we read a lot about the Beers of the Berg, and we thought it was a fun idea to add that element to somebody's costume. We didn't know who at the beginning. And there was a lot of debate about should a doctor wear, you know, something that is about a beer festival. And I was like, I think doctors drink beer too.
We do, we do.
I know. So Noah came in for his fitting, and we had the navy blue hoodie. We had tons of hoodies for him, but we ended up on that color. And I said to him in the fitting, I think we're going to put this logo on here. I think we're going to add it for your character. How do you feel about that? And he goes, I love it. So that didn't actually come from the brand. We created it. And it's funny because now they sell it. So it's sort of become a thing for them. And they gave us permission to use their logo, which is, you know, they deserve to sell as many as they would like, I think. They've been such a great brand for us and so much fun.
I want to talk about, obviously this show takes place over a day. Does the stakes of choosing a costume for a character feel heightened because you're kind of sentencing someone to live in this outfit for about 7 months?
Yeah, for me, it does feel heightened. And I was talking to Noah, and he had given an interview about it, saying for him, he decided to make it easier for him in the fitting room with me. He wasn't going to obsess about the costume too much. I think he felt in safe hands. We've worked together before. But then other members of the cast come in, and they're very sort of, it takes a minute for them to really think it through, as it should. They're going to wear it all year. And I always say, now I want you to be certain before you leave the room. Are you happy? Is this something you can, you know, see in your fit in your room every morning for 7 months? And they, you know, we go back and forth. And I have to say, every single one of them, they're just amazing as a cast. They're stunning. They're so talented. And not one of them ever goes back and says, I wish I hadn't done that. And I hope that's because we make them feel comfortable and we make them feel heard in the fitting room. You know, if they say, oh, I really dislike that, I go, then it's gone. You know, that's not going to happen.
I have to ask about blood on the clothes. I'm so curious about how you make that blood. Do you paint it on? Do you splatter it on? Does it affect the type of costume the person's wearing? Just spill it to me.
Yeah, it's literally spill it. We have this amazing aged eye on our team, Gina, and her detail work, I'll talk to her and say, okay, this is happening, I don't know, like bullet wound, left chest, you know, we go through the whole thing with deep descriptions from the doctors of how much blood that would be, research on blood splatter. I feel like I'm working on Dexter, you know, I was like, the blood, how much blood is there? Where would the blood go? And then she either hand paints, depending on the fabric, because the fabric really sort of teaches you what the blood should do, because fabrics react differently. She'll create a stencil, then she'll paint over the stencil so that each garment, because she has to make 15 or 16 of something, she can't hand paint that. The stencil work is she lays it on each garment, and each garment matches exactly to the stencil. So
Wow.
it's a process
That's so
to make
cool.
sure it's always the same every single time the camera comes across. Because every time they cut that shirt off, the next shirt has to look exactly like the last shirt.
We've talked a lot about like outfitting the medical staff on the show, but tell us a little bit about outfitting the patients.
Yeah, our doctors are amazing. So, especially when we look into the chairs area in the show, when Robbie walks in the morning and the chairs area is full, there's the ER is packed, the emergency department is packed. Our amazing doctors on the show, which we did on another show I worked on, they give me a list. 17-year-old drunk at a bar and a fall. And they give me a giant list of like 200 people and their ailments and what happened to them and where they were and, who they are. And then we, in the costume department, interpret that in our own way. And we create those looks. And I will say, Shanna, who's here today, who I mentioned previously, she is my guru for the chairs department when we do those big giant scenes. And she and her team, I'll give them a rough, I'd like this, and I look at the clothes and before we do the fittings, and I go yes to this, no to that, and they do the hard work down in the cages, fitting them, and then I look at all the pictures and say yes, no, change this. It's basically sort of two departments. Like I'm upstairs in fittings with principals and day players, and my team is downstairs doing the 200 to 300 extras, who change constantly through the year, which is a really big job.
It's amazing because you're so right. And it's not something that people may notice, but it works, which speaks to your brilliance. I guess my last question is, how many pairs of scrubs do you now own, Lyn?
I don't own any, but Warner Brothers has an awful lot. And thousands, I would say we have thousands. Because even if we only meet one person, let's say we meet one nurse from the OB department, I always like to be ready for the fact that next season we might go to the OB department, and I've already established what that looks like. So we end up buying the whole department, even though we only see one person, because these fans, our fans who we love, they watch this show. They have eagle eyes, and I am telling you, if the nurse from OB this season is in, I don't know, orange, I'm making it up, and then next season we go to OB and everyone's not in orange, I'm going to get a letter. So we're just very conscious of being certain that our amazing viewers, feel like and I think that adds to the reality, the reality and the continuity, and each department has its own color and everybody knows who everyone is and the audience knows. And I think that immerses the audience in the show and they feel like they're really in it. And I think it's those the details and staying true to what a hospital would really be like is what people love. So I'd like to, take care to ensure that we continue to do the hard work to make this show look real.
Do you feel like a special little bit of satisfaction when fans notice the care that you put into creating all of these costumes, or like eagle-eyed fans notice this bracelet or those earrings or something like that?
We love it in the costume department. We absolutely love it because you feel a little bit like an unsung hero sometimes on these kinds of shows. A lot of the time I feel like people say, well, they're just in scrubs, but the fans notice that they're not just in scrubs, that these tiny details that tell you who the person is, and they notice that, and that's kind of amazing, and we are thrilled when that happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Wonderful work, and congratulations on the show.
Oh, thank you for making time for us and for coming to our department and look at everything. We're so grateful. Thank you.
Lyn, you're the reason why all the eagle eyes, everyone on Reddit loves the costume design on the Pit. Just saying.
Yes, they do. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you.
That was so interesting.
In my mind, I was like, I thought maybe I had a little bit of an idea, but the level of detail is so rad. And, the fact that they made that Beers and Berg shirt or sweatshirt and now they actually sell it, it's so cool.
No, that's incredible. But I will say the blood details I was not expecting, because in my head it's like, oh, it's just, you just kind of splatter it on. But the continuity between scenes, between episodes of certain articles of clothing and how much blood they have or don't have on them was really fascinating. And honestly, very expert.
Didn't even think about that. I'm with you. I thought it was like, oh, cornstarch and like Kool-Aid or whatever. And they just paint it on. And it's interesting when she mentioned the old guard not wearing traditional scrubs, because that's so true. The old guard of dudes in the hospital, like oftentimes are wearing like hiking boots or cargo pants, like random things, because they just don't care and they just want to be comfortable and functional.
Yeah, no, I noticed that in season 1 that Dr. Robbie isn't wearing sneakers, that he's wearing hiking boots. And this season, the trend continues.
And she caught it all. She got every single detail. Also, why am I not surprised that there is a huge community online that spots all these details? Like that is the fun of doing this podcast and interacting with the audience, because they spot things I didn't even think about.
Totally. And I think when you're seeing an actor in the costume, the exact same costume in every single episode, you do get to notice like this little bracelet or those earrings or like the shirt that someone's wearing under their scrubs. And that is kind of all you can use to kind of see what is their life like outside of the pit and outside of the emergency department.
I wonder how much, because this show is having such a cultural moment, I wonder how much the show is going to influence hospital fashion. I'm super curious.
Well, you tell me. I want you reporting on the front lines.
All right, so I'm going to wear cargo pants and a brown hoodie and hiking boots to the hospital. I will wear a helmet on my motorcycle, though.
And thank God.
Let's read some comments. I'm actually excited about this.
Oh, gosh.
Hopefully it's all positive and there's no haters, but let's dive into this.
Okay.
Here's one. I really like the story with the new hire RN. I really feel for her. I've once exploded a lab vial. I overfilled it because I got such a good draw and didn't want to waste it. The top popped right off in front of the patient and her family. I felt that in my bones. Relatability to Nurse Emma. I like it.
Oh, okay. I have one about Dr. J. It's not a surprise that Dr. J is an influencer, because last season she was questioning the influencer patient who she follows with great interest. It seemed like that was leading her to become an influencer herself. I like that. I like that, like astute watching. That's
It's astute watching. And like this next comment, post some Dr. J shorts. Like, I guess you have to find her TikTok and see what's up.
There should really be a Dr. J TikTok.
There probably
I would
is.
love
There probably
to
is.
see her in her influencer era. Okay, I have a question for you. Fans have been calling out roles and jobs in the hospital that we haven't seen yet. So let's stir the pot. Who are we missing, and what unseen roles do you think deserve their moment?
Whoa. I'm going to say pharmacists
Okay.
need to roll in, have a moment, save the day with like a dosing error or something.
Okay.
Also, give me some custodial staff. Like, they're flipping patient rooms and everything like that. Somebody is making sure that these rooms are clean. They play a huge role in the hospital. I want to see custodial staff, janitors, environmental services, whatever you call them. I need them. I need them involved ASAP.
That's it for today's episode of the Pitt Podcast. We'll be here every Thursday right after our new episode drops. And please hang out in the comments, leave us a message. We would love to hear from you.
Watch us on HBO Max or listen wherever you get your podcasts. See you next week.
The Pitt Podcast is a production of HBO Max in collaboration with PRX. The executive producer of PRX is Jocelyn Gonzalez. Our managing producer is Courtney Florentine. Our editor is Lucy Perkins. Our production managers are Edwin Ochoa and Tony Carlson. Our video producer and editor is Anthony Q. Artis, with assistant editor Damon Durrell Hinson. This show is engineered by Tommy Bazarian. Special thanks to Joe Carlino.
The executive producer of HBO Podcasts is Michael Gluckstadt. The senior producer is Allison Cohen-Sirokach, and the associate producer is Aaron Kelly. Technical director is Insung Kwon. I'm Alok Patel.
And I'm Hunter Harris. We'll see you next week in the Pit.